I'm now at a pilot in Dallas, Texas. And although the app says that they only have, a couple dozen, something like that, reserved spots, there are a lot of them here that are reserved. It says on their website or on their app that there's 147, if memory serves, parking spots here, and so many of them are reserved. Now, that's fine. I just wish the app would tell you the accurate number, because there is one pilot that's in Cinnaminson, New Jersey, and every single one of those spots is reserved. And that's fine if you want to do that. I just wanted to say so on their app, so that way you understand what you're getting yourself into if you decide you're going to schedule yourself a trip that way. And sometimes you go to these truck stops and it'll say they have 19, 20, something like that reserved spots, and there are so many, but they're not labeled properly. That's what really irritates me, is when you have to look at the spot and you're barely able to see any yellow when you're looking at it. You're like, wait a minute, is this a part of where it used to say reserved? And you're looking at it and it's just so faded. Yet they come by and there's no signs or anything that say this is a reserved, line or something like that. You just park there and then they come and knock on your window and expect you to pay for the spot. Now, that happened to me 3 months ago. I think it was the very first job I went out on. That was the job that I was still driving a dry van, because I went out and they didn't have a flatbed for me just yet, so I couldn't start the pods account. So they had to get me a dry van load to get me back to Atlanta from Grand Bay, Alabama. But they got me one and they said, just take it, drop off your empty and bring the empty back to Atlanta. Well, they didn't have any empties at that location. I had like 960 or something like that tires that had to be offloaded before I got the empty back. But I had to sit there for 5 hours. And then it was in the middle of the storm. And by the time I offloaded there and got completely unloaded, it was dark. I was in Theodore, Alabama, looking for a parking space, and I got in, I think, the second to last spot, if memory serves. And about an hour or two after I'm getting there, there's a knock on the door. You're in a reserved spot. You can either move or you can buy it. And I'm like, a reserved spot? Where is it? And so I got out and I said, not trying to be confrontational, but where exactly does it say it's reserved? And he kind of looks around and he says, oh, it must be faded. But he's looking all over the place. He's like, yeah, these are reserved though. I'm like, it's not fair if you tell me there's a spot that's reserved and it's not marked. That to me is irritating. If you want to mark them as reserved, that's fine. That's fine. That's your prerogative. It's your truck stop. You can make people pay for it if you want to. But it's irritating to me when you don't have it properly labeled and someone runs out of hours, then you're going to stick it and do a hold up on them, telling them that you want money out of them, and you're going to wake them up no less. So that way sometimes it's hard to get back to sleep. And that's what's really irritating also, is that anything out here can wake you up. The other night I was on the road and trying to sleep, and all of a sudden I hear somebody, yell out something and then whistles, and then, screams out something and then, and then screams out something, does it again. It's like over and over again. I'm like, what are you screaming at? I have no idea, because I didn't get out of bed. I just kind of dealt with it because, what am I going to do? Go out there and start screaming at him? Or even if I peek outside and look at him, like, what are you doing? There's probably a reason. He's probably backing up. It was probably a training instructor or something like that. And you probably had somebody that was backing up into something. He was trying to get someone's attention, or, I don't know. I mean, somebody who had a leak that wasn't paying attention, or somebody who is trying to get the attention of someone in front of them that was blocking them in. Because sometimes you'll run into that in these truck stops. Like right now, I'm backed into one, and I'm backed into a spot, but there could very well be somebody that pulls out, that pulls out and, or wants to pull out, and there's a truck right in front of him, and he can't pull out. So he has to go and wake the guy up, get out, move your truck so that way I can leave. You can have the spot after I leave, something like that. But that's one of the things that's really irritating to me, is reserved parking spots. Again, it's not our spot. And yes, I understand paying for things. That's not the problem. The problem is if it's not labeled as a paid spot and you don't know it until you run out of hours. That to me is where it's irritating. And this pilot that I'm at right now does things the right way, in my opinion. If you look at the reviews online, there's a lot of people trashing this location, saying, they didn't do this in their showers or what. You know what? I've been hearing them talk about showers and having nonstop showers. So it might have been just a temporary thing that somebody, that they might have had an issue with, where they didn't have a staff member that cleaned the showers accurately for a while, or appropriately for a while. But now it's fixed. And this location, to me, does it the right way. A lot of their spots are reserved. I'd say well over half of them. And that's fine. And it doesn't bother me, even though it doesn't say the accurate number on the website. What does bother me is when there are spots that aren't properly labeled. This place has some faded paint that says reserved, but they have in front of it reprinted it in very visible yellow wording that says reserved. And I very much appreciate that. That is a location that cares, in my opinion. They want to be upfront and honest. The other day I stopped at a spot, and I had already done my post trip, and then I looked at it, I'm like, wait a minute, is this a little bit of yellow here? And I looked at it, I'm like, wait a minute. I look at the other spots nearby, and I'm seeing little splotches of yellow in different areas on there too. I'm like, wait a minute, this might be a reserved area. And kind of continued to look around, and then down farther I saw no yellow on any of those, but you only see like a little splotch like that, and then another one over there, and you're like, that's a little bit of yellow. It's probably reserved, and I don't want to have them come and knock on my door, especially since there's other parking spots that you can go into during the day, because I like to get done in the early afternoon. So let me tell you how I got to where I am right now. I got up the next morning after my last entry, and I was in Cookeville, Tennessee, and I started heading east. And sure as the world, I was expecting to hit Eastern time zone shortly after leaving, and I did. It was probably within half an hour. I was very close to the border. I looked at it later that day, and Cookeville goes up, and then there's a little line that goes through Tennessee that goes up between Georgia and Alabama, and then the line kind of goes over a little bit of an angle, and Cookeville was right over that. So I was like, yeah, there we go. And it was smooth sailing. It was going just fine, going up straight, going up north, and no real problems. Not a bad drive, because it's basically going up 40 and then getting on 81 and going north. Once you get up 81, you have to go east on 70 towards Baltimore. Now, 70 is very interesting because right after you turn south at Baltimore to get on 695 in order to go about 6 miles before you get on 95 north and go up north through the tunnel under Baltimore. And but what's funny to me is that 70 ends and it becomes like a parking lot and a park. You can like walking trails and stuff. It's kind of interesting. It'd be neat to do it sometime when I'm not in a semi. That way I could actually park there and say, what do you know? I'm actually at the source of Interstate 70. It's kind of cool. I was not able to get it all the way there, and I only drove for like 9 hours and 15 minutes. And the reason why is because when you get up towards the Maryland, Washington, D.C. area, truck stops are few and far between, and it's very hard to find a place that you can park in. So where I parked was Fort Lena, Maryland, which is just as soon as you turn off at 81 onto 70 and start heading towards Baltimore, it's barely 20 minutes, something like that. Fort Lena, that's the South Mountain eastbound rest area. And I got there on a Sunday. And I looked at it and I said, okay, I got about an hour and 40 some odd minutes left on my clock. Now, I could go on and drive about an hour into Baltimore and then hit north. But at that point, I'm going to be chancing it. Do I want to run the risk of not being able to make it all the way? I know I wasn't going to make it to Carney's Point, one of my favorite truck stop in New Jersey. I was not going to be able to make it probably to Northeast or to Elkton, Maryland, to go to the Pilot Flying J's either. So I said, all right, I'm going to go ahead and stop here for the night, because if I go north out of Baltimore, there's a couple other rest areas going closer to Maryland, but they have a lot less, or closer to Baltimore, but there's a lot less parking spots there. And if you don't find a spot, then you're going to have to just drive on through. There's no looping back around or anything, and there's only a few spots, and sometimes they fill up. And then the Chesapeake Bay house, or the Chesapeake house and the Maryland house, they don't always have a lot of parking either. So although they're right off of the interstate and you can pull off there and there's multiple restaurants and stuff, don't want to risk it. So I was like, no, I'm going to go ahead and just stop here for the night. I knew that I was going to wake up and have 181 miles to drive to get to Cinnaminson, New Jersey and do my drop. Not a problem. So what I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and park it here for the night. I went ahead and parked. Called a night, got up early the next morning. This is Monday morning now. And I said, I'm going to get to Cinnaminson by about 6 a.m. So I need to leave here by about 3. I got up at 2:30. I did my pre-trip shortly thereafter, got on the road, and it slowed down a few places. Not just going over the Delaware Memorial Bridge, but there was a couple other places where it slowed down. And then by the time I got there, it was like 6:10. So I checked in with security and no one was in line ahead of me. So I pulled right up, dropped all of my containers, and then went to the Pilot right around the corner where they have 6-hour parking. And I like that they have 6-hour parking, because if you're down the street from the Pod's location, that's really convenient. So I hung out there. One of my friends lives near there, so I called him and he came and hung out with me for over an hour in the truck, and he went by Dunkin' Donuts and he brought me some walking bacon, some of the maple crispy bacon that they have. He got me 2 little packs of that, and I love that stuff. I will never turn down bacon. It's so good. Anyway, it's cool hanging out with him, and we just talked and chit-chatted and watched videos and talked and stuff like that. It's kind of cool. He had to leave to go to work to get a meeting, and we were going back and forth about if I don't get pre-assigned, would I would go ahead and pay for the spot in that New Jersey location overnight. I'd go ahead and pay for one of the reserve spots and then hang out with him and his family and maybe make a video, who knows. But ended up getting pre-assignment, and it came through at like 11, something like that. So I was only picking up down the street, so I went there to Cinnaminson, picked up my containers, and I was so happy it was not one of those that, pick up here and then drive to 4 different locations in New Jersey or go to New York or something like that. No, it was going to Garland and then to Lancaster, Texas. Yes, about 1,500 miles. And the first thing that went through my mind was, I have 31 hours and like 12 minutes left on my clock for the week before I have to reset. The thing I don't want to do is reset while I'm in the middle of what should be not a very far. I don't want to get all the way there and not be able to deliver for like another day and a half or 2 days. So I was like 31 hours and like, it was like 16 minutes or 13 minutes, something like that. And I was like 1,500 miles. It's 14. What is it? I'll look at it real quick because I'm looking right here at the tablet. It's 14,000. Come on, tablet slow. 1,497.4 miles. Right on. So anyway, picked up in Cinnaminson, and I said, I'm going to drive my way back. And thinking about it, that's about 1,500 miles. And I said to myself, I got to preserve my 31 hours. And I got to make sure that I drive in areas of no traffic. So that way I can try to get over 50 miles per hour. And that includes the time that it's going to take me to drop these. So I said, that means I'm going to probably have to do my typical, shift back to, going to drive for only a couple of hours, whatever, and then try to get on the road. Because if I can get about 600 to 650 miles a day, I'll get 1,200 to 1,300 miles down in 2 days. And then that means that I could do the last little bit into the Dallas area, and go to those 2 locations in the early morning, because that was, what was that? That was Monday, I think. I think it was Monday. Let's see, today is Friday. Yesterday is when I did the drop-offs. So that was Thursday. So Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. So that was Monday. So I picked up on Monday. And I decided, you know what? On the South Mountain exit has, on one side, it's Fort Lena. That's when you're going, the rest area is Fort Lena, Maryland, when you're going eastbound. But when you're going westbound, that's Myersville. Myersville is the exact opposite side of the interstate, and it's the westbound rest area. And I said, you know what? That's about 181 miles. That's almost 200 miles. I'll go ahead and stop there for the night. I stopped there, got a great parking spot there, shut down for the night, and better yet, finished up at like 2 something, so I was able to wake up at midnight and head out. And the next day, I was able to get from that location, where was it? It was someplace in Tennessee. It was Lebanon, Tennessee. I was able to get all the way down there. So 617 miles, something like that. It was nice. And one thing I will tell you that's kind of cool is that, remember a couple weeks ago when I got food poisoning, I wanted to stop at the Florence, South Carolina exit, that pilot, so that way I could stop there and get that 3-meat sandwich from Buc-ee's on the other side of the interstate that I've seen advertised all over the road. And that is the only location I had seen that had a Buc-ee's and a truck stop on it so far. But Crossville, Tennessee also has a Buc-ee's and a pilot on the other side. So I was like, I could stop there. Wasn't able to on this trip, but at least I know that location exists now. So I can stop there if it's convenient and it's within my, 550 to 650 miles I want to drive in a day. Stopped in Lebanon. Now I thought about, because my DTLs are based out of that Nashville, Lebanon exit. But the thing is, I had hit the road. And when I hit the road and I stopped at the truck stop in Cookeville, Tennessee, I had showered the night before, but I wasn't about to pay out of pocket, for a shower that night. So I was like, I'll just shower the next day. But then I stopped in the rest area. And then when I went out to Cinnamon City and then came back, I stopped at the rest area again. They don't have showers in the rest areas. You can only wipe yourself down so much, and you start to feel really nasty. That was 3 days without a shower. It was almost like when I first started off, except that it was colder, not hot. Because in Grand Bay, Alabama, when it's 100 degrees outside, when you're not showering, it's nasty. Anyway. So, I stopped there in Lebanon, finally showered. It felt great. Got up early the next morning, and I drove out west. And I stopped for the night at a Pilot or Flying J in Sulphur Springs, Texas. Now that was interesting, because as I was driving in, sorry for the truck, but hey, it is what it is. And that was really interesting. On my drive that day, I ran into some traffic. And I had my CB radio on, and I'm listening, and the truckers are talking, and they're just laughing and whatever else. And a woman comes on, and I can't really understand what she's saying, but it sounds like at some point she says, if you're looking for some breakfast companionship, because it was early, it was in the early morning, like breakfast time. She said, stop at something. Couldn't make out everything she was saying, but it sounded to me like she was trying to pick up some attention, because the next thing that you hear on the CB radio is all the truckers start talking about the way it was back in the 90s with the lot lizards. Now, I know there's a lot of human trafficking and stuff like that happens, and that's what a lot of lot lizards are this day and age, and that's definitely something you call in. You don't play around with that. But they were talking about back in the 90s, how much fun it was, because if you had an empty flatbed, lot lizard would be dancing up there, and people would bring out their music, and it's like, they start telling stories, and I tell you, they got a lot of them. Just like any industry that you're working in the 90s or the 80s or whatever. You've got some stories. And I'm sure that there's a lot of things that really is a throwback to people. Anyway, I was able to get about another 624 miles down, if memory serves, that day. Here's what was really interesting is on that drive, there was a rest area I stopped at. And I stopped at early in the morning, and I pulled in there And there were no parking spaces. And this isn't just that they were all full. Every single one of the signs on both sides of the drive-in, as soon as it says cars go left and trucks go right, it turned into a wall of no parking, no parking, no parking. And they had no trucker parking spots. Why would you call it a rest area and not put a sign out that says no trucks or something like that if you're not going to have any parking spots? There was no parking spots at all. So it's basically you pull on either side, and it was wide enough for trucks to be able to park on the left or right, long enough to run inside and run the restroom. But you don't have any places that don't have those signs. How ridiculous is this? That's really ridiculous. And why would you do that? I don't understand. But one of those states did. I can't remember if, I don't think it was Texas. I don't think it was I don't remember if it was Tennessee or Arkansas. One of those did. And I just coasted right on through it. And then I said, you know what? I don't have to run to the restroom or anything like that, but I imagine there's a lot of people that would stop here and expect to actually be able to go inside, wash their hands, run to the restroom, maybe even take a quick nap. But every single location there had a no parking sign. So I went ahead and jumped out, stopped for 2 minutes, did my truck trailer integrity verification, or trailer inspection verification, or whatever the TIV is. And check the load securement and that kind of stuff, and then hit the road again. I mean, I turn on the hazards, and if I'm there for 2 minutes and a police officer pulled up and said, "What are you doing there?" I'll say, "I'm just checking the load. Want to make sure that it was safe to continue to drive down the road." And then I don't think they'd have a problem with me turning around and getting right back on the road, since I'm not sitting there lingering. Anyway, Sulphur Springs, Texas. It was so weird arriving there. I mean, because 2 days in a row I drove with almost no traffic or no hindrance at all, and I was able to get just over 600 miles, and then it shut down. So I was shutting down after like 10 hours of driving, and after 2 fuel stops that there was no traffic, so you just pull right up and use the Flying J or a Pilot Flying J app, and you do your mobile fueling, and you're down the road in 10 minutes. I was stopped both days at like 11:30 a.m. And then I shut down, and then I go to sleep after a while, and then I wake up and head out again. It was really amazing. Kind of cool. So anyway, got up in the early morning hours and drove my last 75 to 81 miles, something like that. I think it was 81 total miles, 75 miles on I-30 if memory serves. Arrived in Garland, and because I got there early, I went ahead and shut down. Now here, it was a bit annoying waiting, because I've been there in the past and they've offloaded me at 6. I just dropped off one container there, and I was hoping to get on the interstate, the circle, one of the beltways, and go down to Lancaster. But apparently when I got there, the guy, a few minutes after 6, the guy shows up and he says, "Hey, you're going to have to wait until the warehouse guy gets here." I said, "No problem." I said, "What time does he get here?" He says, "Normally like 5:30. So the fact that he's not here now means that there's a problem." I'm like, "Great. No problem. I'll hang out." It wasn't short or rude or anything like that. But I hung out and I waited. And then once the guy showed up, he showed up with someone else. And that by then the guy had yelled out, "Yeah, the fact that he's not here now means that there's a problem." And then when he pulled up, he says, "Yeah, that's the big boss, the big manager that picked him up and brought him here. So there's definitely something that happened." So I was wondering if there was like a breakdown or something like that. No worries. I knew they were behind schedule at that point. And so I knew I was going to be waiting. I was already going to be off the clock. And at this point I had, I only had 31 total hours, but because it was smooth sailing, I was down to about 5.5 hours when I left that morning. And by the time I stopped, I was just under 4. By the time I broke the straps and had everything ready. Maybe it was just over 4. Anyway, I logged off the tablet, sat around there, because I arrived early to make sure that I'd beat the traffic in. I wanted to arrive early and just hang out. So I did, and then sat there off the clock until they were finally offloading me, which was almost 7 a.m. They offloaded me. It was just the one. He says, "Just the one container?" I said, "Yep." He grabs it and then signs my form, and I'm on the way. He's like, "Yeah, sorry for the wait." "No problem, sir." Hit the road. And then there was traffic. I hate the Dallas-Fort Worth traffic. It is terrible. Hit the road, and there was a couple of four-wheelers that by the time we passed them, both of them, I guess they had gotten into a crash, but there was no damage done to either one of them. And I'm listening to the CB radio, and they're like, yeah, a couple four-wheelers crashed in. They're cleared now. They're loaded up onto the thing. By the time we all moved into the left lane and got going south, it was over an hour. And I'm creeping along. And I finally got down. I had a fuel stop added on. So I stopped there, and it was a fuel stop that was only like 4.5 miles from Lancaster. So I did the fuel stop, dropped off in Lancaster. And then I drove over to the Pilot that was like 2 miles away. And that's where I am right now. They had a Wendy's. I got my burger that I usually like to have as soon as I like to get a burger as soon as I'm shut down, as soon as I have a reset. And I went there for my Baconator, and they're like, do you want a single, a double, or a triple? I'm like, a triple. And they're like, yeah, 3 patties and 3 pats of bacon. I'm like, give me that one. So he gives me that one. Man, that thing was good. And it was also it's near a Whataburger, so I had to try. I've seen advertisements for their white chocolate raspberry shake. So I was like, yeah, I got to try that too. I don't really eat a whole lot of sweets on the road anymore. So it was, so I have to make sure I get my sweet tooth satisfied while I'm stopped in a reset. That way I kind of enjoy it. It's something to look forward to. And if anything happens to my stomach, because it's not something I usually have a whole lot of anymore, that means I'm someplace where I'm stopped and I can run inside. So I'm hoping that later this afternoon I get pre-assigned, because I've got 33 minutes and 19 seconds left on my 70-hour clock until about 7 hours from now when I'm done with my 34-hour reset. And when I'm done with that reset, I will have 70 hours again, and I'm in Lancaster, Dallas, southeast Dallas. So hopefully I will get assigned someplace, because today is Friday, and I won't be able to pick up anything because my reset will not be done. Pods closes in about an hour and 40 minutes. So I would like to get pre-assigned, and I would like to be able to hit the road early, get there at 6 a.m., get something, and maybe head on over to Florida. Maybe head back to Atlanta. Do that drop there. Drop off something. Be awesome. Because if I can get the thing dropped off by Monday, if I pick up on Saturday and I drop off Monday, as long as it's assigned before the end of the day on Saturday, and I drop it off before first thing in the morning on Tuesday, I should get paid for it next week. If not, then I'll only get paid for 1,500 miles, 1497.4. That would not be a very good paycheck. However, my tuition reimbursement went through on the, which is only $200, but it's $200 per month, and you get that once, like halfway through. And so I got that on the last check that it posted today, I guess, or yesterday, I think it was when it hit my bank. And there's that. And my safety driving bonus finally went through. Because I have a 5 out of 5 safety score on the 5 total points, it looks like it's paying me 5 extra cents per mile. That's awesome. That really adds up. And it also means that I go from 49 to 54 cents per mile. And that really helps, because it added about 163 miles, or $163 or something like that to my last paycheck. And I know some companies like Western Express, they have a pretty aggressive increase structure. And you can get up to like 60 some odd cents a mile after, a few months or a year or whatever it is. I tell you though, I've hit the 3-month mark, and people will tell me, you're considered experienced. And this is something I've known for a while. You're experienced after 3 months, you're experienced after 6 months, and after a year. And then the next step is like 2.5 years, and you can be an Amazon driver if they're available. But the thing to me is not having to go and do any late pickups, then fight for position in getting the very worst possible reserve parking spaces at a truck stop that you're shutting down for at night at like 7 or 8 p.m. It's really appealing. It's really appealing not having to deal with that and dealing with the pods account. So unless I happen to find a job that is, load up here, maybe take to Texas and then pick up a load and take it back to Atlanta, and you're out all week, you're out 5 days, and then go back and you have your weekend. Dedicated runs like that. Or like there was one that I remember seeing before I got hired by Schneider. that they required experience was a dump truck. Take a dump truck from Atlanta to Birmingham, Alabama, drop it, and then come back every day. Well, that sounds really appealing too. Now, there are dedicated things like I saw in Schneider, it says if I live within 100 miles of Fairburn, I could drive intermodal. But Fairburn is like a long way from my house on the opposite side of the city from where I live. I don't want to end up going 60 to 70 miles one way to pick up the truck in the morning, go out, and then come right back. And it's like 200 miles a day or something like that, I guess, by the time you load up and whatever. But I can't imagine them paying like $3 or $1.50, $1.50 per mile. Maybe they do, to make that 200 miles a day worth it. Because right now, if I'm making, even when I was making 49 cents a mile, which I technically am, I only have the bonus that takes me up to takes me up to 54. But even then, that's a mile. That's about 2 miles per dollar. And if I go 600 miles in a day in the long hauls, that's 300 miles, or $300. Granted, it's not as much as I'm used to making with the previous company I worked for, in the previous line of work, but it's not bad, considering that this is a job I trained for about a month at a school, 20 days at a school, and then I went to a train for like 3 weeks, and then they put me out for a week with a training engineer, and then I was out there doing it. It's not bad, all things considered. Granted, the economy is shot, so inflation's out of control. Bags of chips that used to be $2.99 are now $3.99, and the bags are cut down in size. Not that I eat a whole lot of chips anymore anyway. You have to basically go to Costco to get a decent deal on stuff. Luckily, my truck is loaded up with all the snacks that I resort to every single day. Get a pack of 24 yogurts from Costco, the Activias. Drink water all day. Have to have my Zip Fizz if I need caffeine on the road. But aside from that, it's meat. It's meat sticks and stuff like that. And cashews. You get a big old bag of those from Costco, and you have a portion of that. You have a meat stick. You have I have my Hot Pockets in there. Before that, I had some pigs in a blanket and corn dogs and other things. But I tell you, it's nice having just a Hot Pocket at the end of the day. You throw it in the air fryer and it's good. Man, he is barreling through there. He's flying. Sorry. So anyway, that's the latest. That is the latest. Really not a whole lot to report this time. I'm bored. I understand the safety aspect of the whole FMCSA 70-hour work week over 8 days, but I don't really want to drive for 8.5 hours a day and keep miles, or keep and work every single day, because that doesn't seem like you're going to go very far. Granted, 8.5 hours is still, it's still, if you went 60 miles an hour, that's like 480 miles. And then you're shutting down, and that means this drive here that's 1497. If I got up that morning, went and picked up, and then I spent, and of the 1,500 miles, I got down to 1,300. That's 2 days of full driving and then dropping off. That means I could have driven 480, that's 960, and I would still have 300 some odd left. So, I guess technically I still could have done it. It would have been the same in this case. But when I was going across the country to California, I loaded up. I hit it hard. I then hit the next few days hard. Got there, offloaded, waited, picked up, drove right back, hit it hard again. And then the less days you have, the better it is. Now, I really like it when I can schedule my shutdown over a Sunday. That way I'm driving during the week. Pods locations are available all the time. But that doesn't always happen, because, pods are only open Monday through Saturday, not on Sunday. And it'd be great if I shut down and restarted every single Saturday. But you know what? If I'm driving over the weekend, that's fine. So if they load me up with, if they give me a pre-assignment and I get loaded up tomorrow on Saturday, I can drive on Sunday when there's no traffic on the road or less, and then hopefully drop off on Monday. If not, I'll still be driving, and then I'll drop off on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever it is. I just don't like it when I have to reset and I don't have a load that I'm actively in the middle of. Like when I drove back from California to New Jersey, I shut down part way. But that's because it was like, I did it in like 6 days, including the reset. Because I did 3 days where I drove like 650 miles. That was almost 2,000. I drove almost 2,000 miles in 3 days. And for 2,777 miles, the first day was like 200, 300 miles, something like that. And the last day, I just drove in the last little bit. I mean, that was what I just did the other day. Drove in the last 181 miles. But then I had to reset, so I shut down the rest of one day, took the entire next day off, hanging out with one of my friends, and then I got back on the road. And those trips are like designed for like 8 or 9 days. But I made it there quicker than that, so that's cool. Hopefully I get a pre-assignment. I'll be on the road. But that's the latest. Thanks for watching.